Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Supporting 21st Century Educators, How States Are Promoting Career and Technical Educator Effectiveness. I'm Catherine Jacques from the Center on Great Teachers and Leaders, and I'm so glad that you're all joining us today. This webinar has been a collaborative effort between our center, the National Association of State Directors of Career and Technical Education Consortium, the Central Comprehensive Center, the South Central Comprehensive Center, and the Mid-Atlantic Comprehensive Center. So our center, the Center on Great Teachers and Leaders, or the GTL Center, is part of the Comprehensive Center Network, which is funded by the Department of Education, and our mission is to foster regional comprehensive center and state education agency capacity to support teachers and leaders nationwide. We are co-hosting this webinar with the National Association of Career and Technical Education Consortium, which aims to support an innovative CTE system. And this webinar would really not be possible if it weren't for the wonderful help of our Regional Comprehensive Center partners. Two of the centers that we're partnering with are the Central Comprehensive Center, which provides support and technical assistance to Colorado, Kansas, and Missouri, and the South Central Comprehensive Center, which provides support to Arkansas, Louisiana, and New Mexico. We also had help and would like to thank the Mid-Atlantic Comprehensive Center at WestEd, which supports D.C., Maryland, and New Jersey. So today we've got a number of people who are going to be presenting. So I'd like to introduce all our speakers. We'll start with Sharon Miller from Octave. She's here to welcome everyone to the webinar. Kate Blosvernon, who's on the line from NASDA CTEC, and myself will be moderating and facilitating the webinar. And then we'll be hearing from staff in 3 states that are working to provide support and guidance to CTE teachers. That's Jennifer Warenberg from Oklahoma, Tyler Barnett, Dennis Harden, and Janice Rayhock from Missouri, and Marie Berry and Sean McDonald from New Jersey. So with that, I would like to introduce and welcome Sharon Miller from the Office of Career and Technical and Adult Education. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sharon.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. On behalf of the Office of Career and Technical and Adult Education and our Assistant Secretary, Brenda Dan Messier, I wanted to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. Our office is pleased to be part of the effort to share the work that is being done on career and technical education by the Comprehensive Center on Great Teachers and Leaders. Our office has made a 5-year investment in the Comprehensive Center because, like all of you, we believe that great teachers and leaders are critical to student success. Yet, despite the fact that roughly 15% of our nation's teachers are CTE teachers, they are often left out of discussions and initiatives pertaining to teacher quality. To address that issue, we thought, what a better way to do that than by joining forces with the Comprehensive Center and their already established network of national and regional partners. So the Center's already begun moving forward with work to address the specific needs of the career and technical education field. This webinar features the Special Issues Brief, which is called 21st Century Educators, Developing and Supporting Great Career and Technical Education Teachers. The Center has additional work planned for the spring and the summer of the year, and they'll be releasing such resources as student learning objectives for CTE courses, and they're also going to be updating some information on state evaluation policies for career and technical education teachers, and those are going to be made available in state and teacher in the state teacher and principal evaluation policy databases that they house. So again, we are so pleased to be part of this effort, and we thank Angela Minichi, the Center Director, and her staff for their leadership on the project, and I thank the team in our office here, Robin Oots and Nancy Brooks, for their work on this project. And with that, we'll turn it back over to Catherine.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Now I'd like to introduce Kate from NASDA CTEC, who's going to tell us a little bit about the importance of CTE today and a little bit about why we're putting on this webinar.
Thanks, Catherine. Well, I imagine that all of you on the phone recognize the importance of CTE, so I just put a couple of bullets here. For those of you who don't know, the National Association of State Directors for Career and Technical Education Consortium is a membership association for all state directors across 50 states as well as territories in the District of Columbia. And this issue of teacher effectiveness and teacher quality in the CTE area is obviously one of great interest to our members, the broader CTE community. So first, sort of just framing this about why CTE, why are we having this conversation is, as we all know, CTE and the career-ready skills and knowledge and dispositions that it is able to impart on our students is critical and fundamental to the broader agenda that so many states, the Department of Education, and other major players have embraced around education. The notion that all students should be graduating high school, leaving their post-secondary education and training fully college and career ready, and not just academically prepared, but also in the technical and employability skills. We also know that CTE is the primary solution to the skills mismatch that we hear so much about, that unemployment remains high, and yet there are about 3.5 million jobs that are going unfilled, largely because the skills just aren't there, and those are largely the technical skills, and that CTE can really provide a major lever for addressing the skills challenge. And finally, we know that CTE is also what engages students, what keeps them in school. They have students are more likely to graduate, more likely to earn college credits while in high school if they're engaging in CTE. So all of these are, sort of the obvious reasons, the importance of CTE, but this conversation today, and why we're really having this conversation, is that as states are moving towards figuring out what teacher evaluation looks like, in part driven by Race to Top and related reforms, but also I think that's something that just a lot of states and districts are taking on and taking ownership over, just recognizing that's where the field is going, needs to go, that when you're looking at systems and building a system for teacher quality, teacher evaluation, teacher effectiveness, the CTE sort of education field presents both unique challenges, but also this conversation really provides some opportunities for new meaningful professional development, professional learning, and ways to really advance the field. So we're hoping today the goals of this webinar are really about sharing some emerging practices from across 3 states that are addressing different ways of inducting teachers, of providing professional learning, for helping them understand how to develop systems for evaluating student growth in a quote unquote untested subject, to use sort of the buzzword associated with teacher effectiveness, explore some different models, but really begin and help elevate and drive forward the conversations that new ideas can be emerging. Our hope is all of you on the line will be able to see something from one or more state programs that we show you that will resonate with what your state's thinking about, where you're putting your energies behind that. So this is definitely the first of many conversations. NASA CTEC, along with the Department of Education, has been a great partner with the Center for Great Teachers and Leaders, and look forward to building on today's conversation to continue supporting the field.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's a really great introduction as to why this is really important and why we're really excited to be sharing all of the work that's been going on in these states today. So just to give you a little overview of what our agenda looks like, the first part of our webinar will focus on how Oklahoma and Missouri are working to support incoming CTE teacher effectiveness. So we'll give a quick policy overview and then turn it over to Jennifer, Dennis, and Janice to hear about the work in their states. Then the second part of our webinar today will focus on how Missouri and New Jersey are working to support CTE teacher effectiveness through their work on CTE-specific student learning objective guidance. And at the end of this webinar, we hope that you will have learned something about how CTE teachers' effectiveness is important for student success. You'll have gained some understanding of what the key supports are for CTE teacher effectiveness, and learned about how each of these states is really approaching these issues. We're also going to follow each section with a time for questions so that we can address anything that you might be interested in. So just a moment on technology, and then we'll jump into the meat of our presentation. We're going to have a couple of polling questions during the webinar, which will show up on the right-hand side of your screen. So when the polling question comes up, you'll be able to select one answer and then just click Submit to share it. And then we'll share the results of the polls with everybody after a few seconds when everyone's had a chance to respond. You should also see a chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We're asking that since we have so many participants today, if you could just use the chat box to enter any questions that you might want to have answered during the section of the webinar. Just one thing to note, please make sure that you select all participants in the box for who you're sending it to, so we can make sure that the moderators actually see your question. You can type a question at any time during the webinar, and then we'll just address it during the Q&A session. We have a really packed agenda today, so we'll try to get to everyone's questions, but if for any reason we're not able to get to everyone's questions today, we will make sure that we respond to all of the questions when we post the webinar online. But hopefully we'll be able to get to everything today. So with that, we'll begin our presentation on beginning CTE teacher experiences and support. So as many of you already probably know, there are many different ways in which CTE teachers can be certified in states across the country. And as you can see on this map, many CTE teachers go through alternative certification processes rather than traditional teacher prep programs. Also, there are many states across the country that don't require incoming teachers to have a bachelor's degree, at least when they are beginning as classroom teachers. So this sort of policy landscape can result in a lot of variance when it comes to the level of preparation that CTE teachers receive, and also just the incoming quality of CTE teachers. There's some research out there that also suggests that many CTE teachers report a need for help with common classroom skills such as pedagogy, behavior management, classroom management, things like that when they first enter the classroom. So one of the ways that many states have worked to address this issue is by offering, or in some cases requiring, induction and mentoring programs for the first few years of teaching for teachers. When these programs are done well, both types of programs can really help to provide support for CTE teachers and result in increased effectiveness. So we'd like to ask you our first polling question, and that is, what kind of training and support do CTE teachers need to most increase their effectiveness? So you all should be able to see the polling question on the screen. If you can go ahead and just select an answer and click Submit. And then we'll share the results of the poll in a few seconds once everyone's had an opportunity to respond. Just while we're waiting for everyone else to get their answers in, I should note that this map that we had on the previous slide comes from our brief, which you can find on the GTL Center website if you're curious. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the poll here in just a second so that we can share the results with everybody, and you all can see what your fellow participants and your colleagues are interested in learning more about. So it looks like there's a pretty good mix as to what people are interested in. It looks like training on classroom management, instructional strategies, and then how to embed academic standards. Those are all really key areas that you all would like to learn more about. So with that, I'd like to pass the torch on to Jennifer from Oklahoma to tell us a little bit about the work that they've been doing.
Hello, this is Jennifer Warburg, and it's an honor for me to say that I work for the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I'm going to begin with talking a little bit about the structure of our system. The Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education provides leadership and resources to ensure standards of excellence throughout the statewide system. We are unique in that we are one of 3 arms of our state's education system, which means Career Tech does not report directly to the Oklahoma State Department of Education. We are proud to say that our new State Director of Career Tech, Dr. Robert Summers, is also the Secretary of Education and Workforce Development. Our Career Tech system offers its programs and services throughout nearly 398 public school districts, 29 technology centers with 59 campus sites, and 16 skills centers located in correctional facilities. Each technology center works closely with advisors from local industry to ensure that students learn the skills needed to be valued members of the workforce. We see Oklahoma's future as a job for every Oklahoman and a workforce for every company. So one of our avenues of recruiting and retaining teachers is called New Teacher Academy. Our New Teacher Academy delivers pedagogy training to all new teachers in the Career Tech system. The teachers meet 4 times in the first year to receive training in classroom management, classroom assessment, instructional planning and strategies. Another avenue of support is called Teacher Induction Program. The Teacher Induction Program is a coaching and mentoring program that provides support to help guide new teachers through the first years of teaching. The new teacher joins a team consisting of an instructional coach, an on-site mentor, and administrator who work together to develop a customized plan for achieving success in the classroom. The final avenue is the one I'm here to present on, the Career Tech Teacher Institute. It's also known as the SREB CTE Alternative Certification Teacher Induction Model. One last thing I want to mention is that we are currently in the state of Oklahoma reevaluating our teacher competencies for teacher certification and aligning that to our teacher evaluations that I felt like need to be said to go along with the things that are presenting today. So why do we need to recruit and retain teachers, and why Teacher Institute? Well, what we saw was we had, due to a growing number of retirements, Career Tech had a teacher shortage, creating a concern for our supply of teachers. Another reason for the shortage is the new demands placed on teachers and the lack of the support that they get. Teachers often feel discouraged and leave the profession. So CTE teachers have such unique needs of support and training based on their certification route. We have a large portion of our teachers with alternative or provisional certifications. These particular teachers will need training and support in pedagogy to be successful educators. So another concern is the increased teacher responsibilities. Oklahoma understands that students are no longer expected to attend school for entry-level employment. These students are in an ever-changing global economy that wants workers who can learn and adapt. The Career Tech system is implementing targeted career and college readiness strategies to prepare students to participate in post-secondary education and the high-skilled workplace. With so much emphasis placed on assessment and accountability, Career Tech educators will be vital in continuous school improvement. Career Tech teachers are collaborating and coordinating with other classroom teachers to provide high-quality instruction to diverse student populations in all areas of the curriculum. Career Tech teachers are providing more opportunities for students to achieve in the areas of reading, math, and science through real-world problem-solving and project-based learning. Based on all this information, research was needed to identify the best strategies for bringing teachers into the field, for helping them make a successful transition to teaching, and for encouraging their long-term commitment. So we needed an induction model to support the many teachers who have an alternative certification route. Our goal was to increase teacher competency, self-efficacy, and their commitment to teaching in Career Tech. With all these ideas, we needed an intervention to solve these problems. Southern Regional Education Board and National Research Center for Career and Technical Education created the Alternative Certification Model for Career and Technical Teachers. The model was designed as a fast-track system of research-based professional development to prepare teachers to meet these demands. The original model consisted of a series of professional development experiences and a variety of support components. The professional development sessions included a 10-day session prior to the first year of teaching, 3 two-day sessions during the school year, and a 10-day session in the summer for the following year. With the spiraled curriculum, the model also provided the beginning teacher with the support of a mentor, coaching from the professional development instructor, the support of their principal or school administrator, and participation in ongoing communities of practice through electronic conversations and guided reflection. Career Tech Institute was the name given for this program for Oklahoma's model. So now you're seeing our current model for 2013-2014. Our model includes, we piloted the SREB teacher induction model for 2 years before we were able to have a state-led project. Data from the 3 years and listening to the advisory committee and customers gave us the opportunity to evaluate the effectiveness of our program. We learned the participants wanted to earn college credit for completing the program. We also understood the amount of time needed to be extended to offer more support and continued learning of the spiraled curriculum. Based on the new data, we extended the program to a year and a half. The 2013-2014 cohort met for 8 days in the summer prior to the school year, 10 days during the first year, 8 days the following summer, and 6 days in the second year. The support provided includes an instructional coach, an on-site mentor, an administrator, and monthly video conferences to have professional learning communities. The participants now earn 15 hours of college credit upon completing the requirements of the program. Our curriculum modules include instructional planning, instructional strategies, classroom assessment, and classroom management. Instructional planning is the first module. The outcomes are to create short-term and long-term standards-based instructional plans based on the varying learning needs of the students. Instructional planning should be reflective, both individually and collaboratively, on the efforts of instruction and use of the reflective process to continually improve instructional practice. The second module is instructional strategies. The strategies should actively engage students in learning and encourage the development of problem-solving, critical thinking, and teamwork skills. Classroom assessment is the next module. We teach the use of formal and informal assessment strategies to evaluate student progress toward learning goals and provide feedback to improve student learning. The last pedagogy module will be classroom management. It should create a learning environment that encourages student motivation, positive behavior, and collaborative social interaction. Our outcomes. Our goal is to increase student competency, self-efficacy, and career commitment for career tech teachers. We are proud to say that 87% of the teachers that have been successfully trained in the Career Tech Teacher Institute are still teaching. Most of our teachers entering into the program do not have a standard teaching certificate. They have left the industry to become teachers and share their knowledge. We do have anecdotal data through the assistance of SREB. If you're interested in this information, please let me know. For the next 5 years, we hope to have multiple cohorts going on simultaneously, building the program to a regional level and include more higher education institutions. We will continue to offer the training to first and second year teachers and developing program evaluation measures based on student impact. Right now we are gathering data that includes the number of competency tests taken by students, career readiness certificates, and industry credentials students have achieved, and the assessment types for our A through F grading system. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share what Oklahoma is doing for our teachers.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Now we'd like to turn the presentation over to Dennis and Janice from Missouri. And once again, if you have any questions, we'll address them at the end of this session. So, Dennis, things should be good to go for you.
Okay, good afternoon. We would like to share a little bit about a couple of projects that we have in Missouri. We have long valued the importance of supporting teachers since a large majority of our teachers come from the profession other than the out of education programs. And so we have developed two separate programs that we've had success. Our New Teacher Institute has been used for a number of years, and then our mentoring program, we've been instituted it for about 10 years, so we've had quite a bit of luck with that program. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about our mentoring program. We started the mentoring program back in 2003, primarily as a result of a state statute that required individuals that had initial professional certification to participate in 2 years of mentoring. The law was flexible in that they could either do mentoring in district or they could participate in some other type of program. And so as a result of that, we had developed our CTE mentoring program because we felt we had unique needs for our teachers. And so as a result of that, we developed that. The mentoring requirement is not only for teachers but administrators and all certificate holders. As I stated, our mentoring program started during the 2003 school year and includes all career education program areas. We transitioned the program from a large statewide meeting where we brought all of the mentors and proteges into more of a program-specific meeting that aligns with our other statewide meetings, and so that teachers get not only the professional development from the mentoring, but also along with other professional activities that were taking place for them. We feel that our program complements the in-district mentoring for several reasons. Most importantly, what we were finding, and I know that this is the same in many states, is that many times there are only one CTE teacher in a school district, a business teacher, or maybe one FACS teacher. And so we felt like it was important to pair an outstanding teacher in the same content area. We also gives the new teacher the opportunity to focus on their content and issues they may have, as well as bringing in new ideas and resources into a program, and feels like it is less threatening when the mentor is from a different school, especially when a new teacher comes into a program that may have had some was struggling in that particular district. Even if we have multiple content-like teachers in the same district, it provides the protege with additional contacts and ideas from outside the district. One of the other interesting byproducts of the CTE mentoring program is that we hear from many of our mentors how valuable it is for them as a seasoned teacher to come in and assist a new teacher with the things that need to be going on in their classroom, because they've been at it for a long time, but they can get new and fresh ideas from the new teacher. So that has been a valuable component and begins to complement what's going on in their districts. Just a little bit about how it works. We have a mentor and protege application that individuals fill out, both if they're interested in being a mentor and if they're interested in being a protege in the program. Again, we start the program at the beginning of the year, and then we typically have a mid-year in-service session for the mentor and protege teams. We also used to require, we no longer do, but we try to encourage the mentors to make a visit to their protege school at least once to do some classroom observation and to assist them in that manner. And also, we encourage the protege to go to the mentor school if they can. We have mentoring manual that is available that our proteges and mentors use as a guide. It's based on the most current research around mentoring, and so we use that as the guide. One of the pieces that I think has made our program successful is we do provide stipends to our participants to offset travel and substitute teacher expenses, as well as a stipend to the mentor as a thank you for their time and expertise in sharing their good work with our proteges. Back in 2005 and 2006, our Missouri Center for Career Education had done some research on our mentoring program and found that the retention rates were higher for those new teachers who participate in the career education mentoring program at a percent of about 31% more than those teachers who did not participate. We haven't done any further research since, but we continue to see the teachers continuing to come back and feel that we're being successful with our particular program. And I'm going to turn it over to Janice to talk a little bit about our New Teacher Institute.
Thank you, Dennis. Good afternoon, everyone. Our New Teacher Institute is intended for teachers entering career and technical education with an alternative certificate. We provide, of course, information, practice, and a network of support for those new teachers, many of whom come into teaching without a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree, or in some cases without any college, but they certainly have a tremendous amount of expertise and that we are happy and excited to have in our schools. Our New Teacher Institute was established in the 1970s, so it does have a long history. We serve primarily secondary teachers in the secondary level, and primarily teachers in the technical skills area and health, although we are not limited to those areas. We are seeing a tremendous amount of growth, however, of teachers that are working with adults and at career centers or in the community colleges. They are seeing a lot of interest in attending our New Teacher Institute as well. What we do is combine the expertise of master teachers who are currently in the classroom, along with content area experts from across the state and leaders of curriculum and instruction across the state. We have a fairly tight curriculum that we follow. It really is a 4-day boot camp where our teachers come in on Sunday afternoon, and they work throughout the evening. They have homework assignments. They start first thing on Monday morning, and we don't end until the Wednesday evening. So it is a very intense program. We try to model desired classroom behaviors. So we post seating charts so that when our new participants come in, they see where they are to be seated, who they are with. They know who their table leader is. We post the schedule of the day and so forth, and so there are no surprises. And we post what the goals of the day are or a particular assignment are. We have rubrics established that are used, and again, all of this is out there for them to see and to utilize. We cover a variety of topics, as you can see. So it is a full 4 days, learning theory, instructional strategies, a lot of time spent on classroom management, and including how to dress. We have found that many of our new teachers don't know what to wear on the first day of school, and so having those conversations with them really is helpful. Their experience includes working in front of their cohort group. One of their first assignments is to teach a short piece as an introductory to themselves, who they are, what their background is, and so forth. And we record that and show that to them later so that they can reflect on that experience. We have them develop a management scheme and some protocols that they may use. We do use Harry Wong's material as a resource for them so that they can think ahead of what kind of protocols will be used in their classroom. And they also leave that fourth day with a lesson plan for their first day. Our goal is to focus on the first day, the first week, and first month of teaching. We know that if they are successful through Labor Day, that they are more likely to be successful throughout the rest of the year. We, too, with Dennis mentioned mentoring, supports these teachers. Their cohort leaders also support them throughout the year, and so that they have success, and so that they have a network of professionals to work with. We work closely with the University of Central Missouri, and our new Teacher Institute is fully aligned with their Foundations course. And so our participants can purchase graduate or undergraduate credit if they wish. Otherwise, if they fulfill the requirements of new Teacher Institutes, we still at the State Department waive one of their courses required for their temporary certificate. We do have a data collection piece on this. We have seen an increase in self-efficacy. We do a pre-post on that. When the participants first arrive, they take the teacher sense of efficacy scale, and then about 30 days later they take that again, and we have done some statistics on that. And of course, we've seen some phenomenal gains, and we have seen increased retention rates. We don't have hard data on that. We have ancillary information from Career Center directors and high school Career Center folks that are indicating that NTI does provide a foundation that increases the retention rates of their teachers. So thank you very much, and we're pleased to have had an opportunity to share this with you.
Thank you so much, Dennis and Janice. That's really really amazing information. And thank you, Jennifer, too. So at this point, we would like to go ahead and take some questions that you all may have. I've seen that a couple of you have put in questions in the chat box, so we're going to start by just turning this over to Kate and having her pick some questions that we'll start by addressing.
Thanks. So it seems there are a few questions, and Jennifer's been able to, folks from Missouri representing to step in and answer, but a couple questions about funding, a question, and I'll just sort of repeat this for those who can't see the chat, about the program in Oklahoma, around, in addition to the credits earned through the professional development that she mentioned, whether there were stipends, and that was largely, they're not paid, but some of those might be using professional development days or contracts. And there was a broader question about how states, so Oklahoma and Missouri, are funding each of these initiatives, and if they're willing to share that. So, Jennifer, maybe you can go first, because I know you wrote. There's anything you want to add to what you shared, and then Dennis or Janice, if you want to pitch in from the Missouri standpoint.
Okay, so most of our teachers that we're talking about are alternative or provisionally working towards those certifications, and so they have maybe 15 college credit hours they're trying to work towards, or an entire degree. And so what we've done is, by giving the Institute, they're going to get 15 hours towards that process. And when we are giving the credit, right now the participant is paying the credit, or paying for the college credit, with some assistance from their tech centers. Some of our tech centers may pay all of the tuition that is remaining, or some of them may pay a portion. As for the State Department of Career Tech, we give a scholarship, about $3,000 per participant, to help offset some of the cost. That's quite a bit towards what they're having to pay. As for the teachers themselves being paid for the days that they attend, some of the days that we have this professional development training, they are on contract. It is their teaching days, and they have been released from those teaching days to come to our training. There are some days that it is not a teaching day. It may be a Saturday. It might be in the summertime, and so they are not being paid to be at our training. I hope that answers the question, but I can definitely try to explain it more if I need to.
That was helpful. Thank you.
On the funding for our programs in Missouri, we utilize our Perkins Leadership dollars for both the mentoring program and New Teacher Institute. We pay primarily most everything. For mentoring, we pay our mentors $300, and we pay our proteges $200, and then we have $2,500 stipend that we pay to we have content experts in each of our program areas. And then for New Teacher Institute, we virtually pay for all of their expenses. We pay for like half of a hotel, and cover primarily all of their costs, and all of that's through our Perkins Leadership dollars.
The next question is around, and I guess it's really the question is about whether this is embedded in any of the programs you just mentioned, but about training professional development in the area of structured English immersion and employability skills. So getting at some of those other challenges, other content areas that are largely embedded potentially within either the induction or the institute programs.
On our New Teacher Institute, it's a 4-day institute, and it's pretty much a boot camp to get them ready to go in the classroom for the first time. So we aren't able to address like the academic, those types of activities.
We do have a seminar piece where on special needs students and so forth, and strategies with special needs students. But beyond that, we don't have a lot in our 4-day boot camp on that. Our goal is to get them situated where they can have a lesson plan and get them through that first week of school, quite frankly.
Okay. So I'll ask one more question, then we're going to move on to the next one. And I'm recognizing this is a really hard question to answer in 2 minutes, which I'm asking you to do, is how are you or these programs addressing the highly qualified requirement for CTE teachers and the credit for academic content? And maybe that's a question we might want to hold to the end, that New Jersey might want to chime in as well. But actually, maybe why don't we hold that? I'm going to come back to that question. Sorry, I'm going to sort of take the moderator's prerogative to actually hold that question, because I'd like to pose that actually to all the state participants. I think with that, we're going to move on to the next set of presentations, but definitely keep the questions coming, because we're going to have more time at the back end to get to some of those.
Thank you so much, Kate. And yes, thank you everyone for your really thoughtful questions. We can certainly take more time at the end to answer everyone's questions. And again, if for some reason we run out of time and there's a question that you have a follow-up on, or you don't think that we've fully gotten to, we'll definitely be posting information along with our slides on our website when we post the full recorded webinar in about a week. But we hope to be able to get to everyone's questions at the end. So with that, we'd like to turn to a review of state efforts in supporting CTE teachers within evaluation systems. So educator evaluation systems, as you all most likely know, are being implemented across the nation as one of the levers to support educator development. And it's very important that these systems are designed to recognize the unique roles and the contributions of CTE teachers so that the evaluation results can provide meaningful performance feedback and professional growth opportunities. So one of the major focuses for a lot of states are measures of student growth. Measuring student growth is very challenging in general, but it's particularly challenging for teachers of non-tested subjects and grades. In many cases, student learning objectives are being used to document student growth. There are a number of states that are starting to implement them. Several states are specifically requiring or recommending that student learning objectives be used as measures of student growth for CTE teachers and for other educators. And again, the map that you see here can tell you a little bit about which states are starting to develop examples or guidance around these different measures, and you can find more information about that in our brief as well. So we'd like to ask our second polling question to see what you all are interested in. So what area concerning measures of student growth for use in CTE teacher evaluation does the field need the most guidance on? So we've got a couple of options here. If you're just digging into these questions, we've got another option at the bottom where you can say not sure if you're not sure. So we'll give everyone a couple of minutes to, or not a couple of minutes, perhaps just a couple of seconds to go ahead and choose an answer for what you all are starting to think about and where you have the most questions right now. Looks like we've got many participants have been able to answer. We'll give everybody about maybe 10 more seconds just to get their answers in. All right, thank you, everyone. We're going to go ahead and compile the results and share them with you all in just a second. We'll wait for the system to process. Great, and so it looks like one of the major questions that is weighing on people's minds is trying to choose what assessments should be used, and then how to combine or weight those multiple measures. That could be assessment results, graduation results, academic growth, certification attainment. That's certainly a big question. So thank you all for sharing. So we're focusing our presentation today on student learning objectives as a measure of student growth. For those who may not be familiar with the term, student learning objectives are a measurable, long-term academic goal that is informed by available data that a teacher or a teacher team sets at the beginning of the year for all students or for subgroups of students. SLOs can be used to measure student progress and overall growth, and they can also be used to make instructional adjustments that are based on data. So when implementing SLOs for CTE teachers, it's really important to think about what measures are valid and appropriate to use considering the content of the course and the context in which students are being taught. So there are a number of considerations that states and districts may want to keep in mind when they're implementing SLOs. First, for example, all SLOs establish a learning target. For CTE teachers, these targets might be based on college and career ready standards, CTE standards such as the Common Career Technical Core, or both. And depending on the course content or design, it may be appropriate to align SLOs to college and career readiness standards if those are being taught or if they're being reinforced in the course. But if students are exiting the course with a certification, it may be more appropriate to base learning targets on CTE-specific standards. Of course, you might have both of these things happening in a course, so that might require more than one SLO if you want to capture both. Second, choosing measures, as you all said, is something that you are really focused on. So to demonstrate growth, you may want to include course-based exams or standardized tests, or tests that cover college and career readiness standards, portfolios, or career plans. You may also want to include achievement measures. They're not growth, but they are important, such as industry certification attainment or graduation rates, depending on what the goals of your program are. And then finally, you might want to consider the context in which a CTE teacher is working. For example, if they're teaching a sequence of courses that leads to certification, or integrated courses that are within the general education context. And these different kinds of contexts can really impact how the SLO is developed. So for some of you that may want more information on SLOs in general, the GTL Center has a number of resources on this. So to learn more about SLOs, you can check out our SLO resource library, our SLO professional learning module, and our short brief on business rules for SLOs. Our SLO resource library also includes sample SLOs, and we have a couple in there that are CTE specific. In particular, we have cosmetology, foundations of technology, and hospitality. And as Sharon mentioned in her beginning remarks, we are also planning on adding more soon. So look out for more information on that. Now, this is an example of one of the SLO examples we have in our resource bank. And this is a grade 11 hospitality SLO from Hawaii. So you can see it's not just guidance. They're actual example SLOs that look like what a teacher would actually produce. And so with that, I would like to turn things over to Tyler Barnett from Missouri to talk a little bit about how they are developing guidance on SLOs for CTE teachers. So Tyler, we're going to pass the controls on to you and turn things over.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. Let me just start by giving a little bit of context around evaluation systems generally here in Missouri. So let's see. Let me get back to there we go. Okay. So starting with a Senate bill, in 2009, the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education developed the state's teacher standards. And then in 2012, the state was granted a flexibility waiver, which required the development of evaluation standards that incorporated student growth as a factor. So together with Missouri's teacher standards and the flexibility contract, those items drove the development of Missouri's essential principles of effective evaluation. And those principles really stipulate 7 foundational components that have to be evident in every district's evaluation system by 2014-15, and that's the date you see there on the slide. One of those elements, of course, is the use of student growth data in educator evaluations. And although districts actually have until 2015-16 to align to the student growth principle, they're nonetheless required to use student growth as a significant factor. That's the sort of label we've given it here in Missouri. But they have to use that as a significant factor in the overall evaluation of educators, including, of course, CTE teachers. And to support district alignment to the principles, Missouri developed a model evaluation system, which is being widely adopted here in Missouri thus far. And the state's also providing training on what it means to align to those 7 essential principles. So obviously, we've encountered a number of questions, as I think a number of states have, on what student data will look like for those non-standardized tested courses. And our strong recommendation is that districts use SLOs for that data. And I say recommendation because, unlike some states, Missouri doesn't actually mandate the use of SLOs for those non-standardized tested courses. We reference them throughout our flexibility waiver, but we haven't established an administrative rule yet requiring SLOs. And I say strong recommendation, actually, though, because Although SLOs aren't required, our districts are still clamoring for guidance on what it means to use student growth data in those non-standardized tested courses. And it really just seems that this topic is, still pretty murky for folks in Missouri, and our response has been that SLOs are the most widely supported solution. So we've embraced SLOs at the department level, and our districts have embraced them as well. However, we've recognized that they still need support, that the districts still need support, and we've begun developing some of those resources with the help of C3 and great teachers and leaders. And our primary resource for support that we have underway is what we're calling the Educator Growth Toolbox. And we see this as a sort of treasure chest of tightly aligned support tools. And one of those tools that we're including in the toolbox is of course, an SLO template. What you see here is a simplified version of some of the elements you'd find in our template. And this template, as with all of the tools we think districts will need for the SLO cycle, would apply to every content area, including CTE. So when we talk about SLOs, we know that to set a meaningful goal, teachers need to identify a specific student population and the content area or essential concepts being learned. We also need a growth target, which should be based at least in part on baseline data from the student population. And we need a rationale for why the growth target was set as it was. And then finally, we need to identify what strategies we'll use to get there and the assessment we'll use to measure performance. And we'll get into what that means here pretty shortly. This image just represents a basic timeline for what implementation might look like in Missouri, and it represents the sort of cyclical nature of the SLO process. We gather baseline data and identify what we want to work on. We set a goal and measure progress towards that goal, and we conduct a summative test to assess whether we've achieved that goal. And then finally, use results to inform decisions for the next SLO cycle. So here we have a basic example of an SLO for an agriculture management course. And in this example, the teacher identified 35 students as the population. And this population, as you'll see pretty shortly, can be further broken down into tiered subgroups with different targets for the SLO. The learning content is that students will demonstrate knowledge of economic principles while making real-world agriculture management decisions. And the time interval identified here is 12 weeks. So this SLO will be administered and assessed within a 12-week period, probably a single unit of content. And the teacher also identified the agriculture economics pre and post test as the assessment. And here the teacher identified those tiered subgroups I mentioned earlier. In this example, we see that for the majority subgroup, 20 students, the pre-test range fell between 26 and 45, and accordingly, the teacher set a target score of 65 for this group. So there's a wide range of growth that should occur within this group, and some will likely exceed that mark, but 65 still represents an ambitious but attainable goal, and that's what we're really preaching. Further down the list, you'll see two additional subgroups, 5 students and 10 students, and they have differing targets based on their pre-test score range as well. It should be noted that in its SLO progress tracker, which is an Excel document that teachers and administrators can use to enter baseline scores, set growth targets, and measure progress along the way. In that SLO progress tracker that the state has developed, the state has set a target score predictor. So the predictor automatically generates a recommended growth target using a formula similar to that used in the state's value-added model for state assessment data. If teachers use the recommended target, it takes some of the guesswork or the subjectivity out of setting a growth target, but again, that is an optional but strongly recommended resource. So back to the example, you can see that the teacher has also identified a rationale based on national agriculture standards that explains why the learning content is appropriate and why the growth target was set as it was. And then finally, the teacher identifies what strategies he or she will use to get there. So this slide is really all about the question that remains. How do we assess SLOs, or what assessments are appropriate for an SLO, rather? So first, we want to ensure reliability, validity, and rigor when selecting an assessment. And so we'll look to ensure that assessments are aligned to course content standards or state standards, that assessments are appropriately rigorous, they're free of bias, and they're driven by critical thinking questions. And to that end, the state offers in multiple guidance documents the following confidence hierarchy of assessments. So generally, state assessments are shown to be the most reliable and rigorous, and assessments developed by single teachers are shown to have the least reliability and rigor. Of course, this doesn't mean that teacher development assessments are not valid or appropriate. So to support teachers in the development of appropriate assessments, we also have an SLO assessment checklist, which is part of that Educator Growth Toolbox. And that assessment checklist outlines all of the necessary components of a quality assessment here in Missouri. And I think you'll see similar templates developed by other states, and we've sort of put that together using models by great teachers and leaders. And then obviously there's really more to developing a quality test than just corresponding to a simple checklist, but the checklist just serves as a touchstone for folks when they want to ensure that their test isn't missing any major elements, really. So the state is in the phase of providing districts now with the resources to implement SLOs effectively across content areas. This means that we're producing guidance materials as well as training, and all of those materials and training resources are available in that growth toolbox, which is really supposed to be a one-stop destination for all that folks need. And then on the back end, we'll also be monitoring implementation to offer additional support as districts delve into the SLO process. Some of the resources primed for release are the SLO handbook, an SLO template, an assessment checklist, an approval checklist, a progress tracking system, and a summative scoring guide. And all of these will be housed in that Educator Growth Toolbox. Additionally, the state's offering multiple ongoing training opportunities during the design and implementation phases for districts. And finally, that's our contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot them our way, and or follow this up with any questions in the Q&A segment, and I'll be happy to field anything I can.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Yes, if anyone has any questions for Tyler, we'll definitely address them during the Q&A period. But for now, we'd like to turn the presentation over to Marie Berry and Sean McDonald from New Jersey to talk about how their department has been approaching SLOs for CTE teachers.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to share some of our New Jersey story with you. And before I dive in a little bit into some of the things that we're currently doing and how we address teacher evaluation, I think it's important to give you a brief history of how we got to where we are today. And as is the case in most states, New Jersey needed to address and improve its system for educator evaluation as it was critical to our Race to the Top award and for our approved ESEA waiver. So in 2010, our governor created an educator effectiveness task force, and this guided the creation of an evaluation system to use student achievement and educator practice. So in 2011, a pilot was launched, and the pilot included many schools in the state, including those in our CTE schools, to help shape the statewide initiative. At the same time, we created a statewide evaluation pilot advisory committee. And this committee met monthly to inform the work to be informed by really the work of the pilot schools. And again, in this process, CTE representatives were included in this committee, and that was really valuable. Although the pilot was initially planned for 1 year, the committee recommended extending it for another year. And through both cohorts of the pilot, we had over 200 schools that were involved. And again, some of our CTE schools and our county centers were involved. As this work was progressing, the New Jersey legislature unanimously enacted our Teach NJ Act in August of 2012. And this called for new processes for earning and maintaining tenure for teachers in New Jersey, and it also included a requirement to design new teacher and principal evaluation systems to be implemented in the 2013-14 year. Yes, that's the year we're currently in. So it became really apparent to us that this was a critical timeline, and our pilot schools were really still gathering information. In March of 2013, our state board, there were regulations proposed for the state board, and then they were adopted in September of 2013, just really as our schools had to launch their evaluation systems. So this slide, I'm really going to focus just very briefly on the right-hand side, which our state evaluation system is based both on teacher practice and student achievement. For the purposes of our discussion, I'm just going to look at the teachers in the non-tested grade areas because CTE teachers fall into that. In the non-tested areas, 85% of the evaluation is based on the observations of teachers, and there's a minimum of 3 evaluations required. And then every teacher in the state is required to set 2 SGOs. As you see, we're calling them SGOs. New Jersey needs to be a little different. And additionally, we use the term SLO to mean something else. So the SGOs account for 15% of the teacher's annual evaluation. In New Jersey's design, we really looked at a lot of flexibility for the system. Each district was required to create their own district advisory committee to guide their work. We as a state did not dictate which teacher practice instrument should be used by districts, so districts chose many. These needed to be somewhat approved by us. Danielson is a common model. Mirzano is another one. So in setting SGOs, we have similarly allowed for a lot of flexibility. SGOs are set with the teacher and the supervisor, and there are specific timelines established whereby the teacher can adjust their SGOs. So what did this mean for CTE? We had a lot of things already happening in our office that really aligned to the work of the evaluation system. We were using standards. Our programs were required to align to the Common Core state standards, especially literacy standards in the technical subjects. We had been involved in mathematics and CTE. Alternate route CTE program had been in effect since 2010, and similar to my colleagues on the phone, really required a lot of academic integration, math, literacy work, standards-based, project-based learning. So we were kind of had the table set to really leap into some of this work with teacher evaluation. So this, again, is somewhat of a timeline of what happened. As those regulations were under discussion with our state board in the spring of 2013, our team here really felt that it would be a great opportunity to highlight and work with our CTE teachers at our May conference, which is an annual event. So to launch the discussion, we met, the Office of CTE met with our Educator Evaluation Office to really ask the question, how can we help our CTE teachers and our staffs prepare for this SGOs? And it was really a welcome discussion. So in conjunction with the Office of Evaluation, we decided rather than to just hold workshops at our upcoming May conference, led by the DOE to discuss regulations and process, we instead looked at this as an opportunity to engage a select group of our CTE teachers and work with them really pretty intensely before the conference in their specific CTE content areas to help us understand some of what the process was for them, to help us understand and refine the process, and also develop some sample SGOs to provide guidance for other districts. So the Office of Evaluation welcomed this, and in fact, we kind of learned that we were leading the way in the state because they had yet to engage the other content areas in this discussion. So it was a learning kind of curve for all of us. What we did was we convened a small group of CTE teachers, some that we identified as our leaders around the state. We had a representative from nearly every career cluster. We asked them to come to the meeting with their curriculum, with examples of current assessments that we're using. We provided some pre-reading materials, and we really spent the first half day answering a lot more questions than we anticipated because we really saw the anxiety and confusion that kind of existed. We were rolling this out, immediately. And so we really communicated that we didn't have all the answers. We wanted to work with teachers in implementing. We knew that although there was a 1.5-year pilot in place, there was still a lot more to learn, and it was really a process for us. We learned that we needed to assuage the anxiety in the community. So we began to explain the processes of SGOs. As we did this with our teachers, it became clearer that if they had curriculum aligned to standards, our CTE standards, and our core curriculum content standards, and if they had regular methods in place already for ongoing assessments toward attaining these standards, the SGO process was not really too difficult. So after our first meeting, we realized we needed a little more work to do with these teachers. We reconvened them. They came back, shared examples of SGOs that they had developed, and as a result of that, we used these teachers to help inform our larger audience in May when we had hundreds of teachers convening at our CTE conference concerned about SGOs. So the teachers themselves really provided on-hand kind of assistance to help other teachers. We certainly communicated again that we knew this was a learning curve for everyone and things would not be perfect the first go-around. Then what happened following our May conference, we continued to provide sessions around the state in conjunction with all of the other content areas. We had separate CTE breakout areas to inform teachers and leaders around the state. And then we also accompanied the Office of Evaluation to some of our more challenged districts to really provide specific technical assistance in the development of SGOs. So that's kind of the big picture. What I'm going to do now is turn this over to Sean, who's really provided incredible leadership here in working with the teachers throughout our state.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. I'll have to say that it is a very big learning curve, and we're still learning as we go through this. So, but I did appreciate early on as our office decided to be as proactive as possible in order to learn what we could to support our CTE programs, teachers, administrators as much and as early as possible to be most effective. Beginning with those discussions with the Office of Teacher Evaluation and joining in the statewide efforts and really focusing on our CTE groups and workshops to help them learn as we learned as well. So we explored the structure of the SGOs and the issues and opportunities that they present for our CTE programs, which I think there are many, as others have said as well. It was extremely helpful to hear the perceptions, anxieties, pressing questions the educators are having regarding the SGOs. And early on in the process, we actually learned how much we didn't know, so it's been big. Through numerous conversations, it's helped us be able to pass on what we've learned through these other sessions as well. So when we talk about student growth, that's often come up, and that's pretty much what initiated each of our sessions, whether it be the beginning sessions to figure out what SGOs are or the ongoing sessions to train teachers on what they should be doing in their SGOs. Teachers keep coming back with the same questions. Well, what ways can growth actually be measured, and what are appropriate methods of documenting growth of student learning? Most teachers, even CTE teachers, defaulted to thinking that growth is expected and required to be measured by the difference between the pre- and post-tests, as there often is required, and it's very common here. However, these opportunities really gave us time to reflect and have good discussions about, what are alternative measures of documenting growth and learning for CTE. And the intriguing part for me was actually to be part of these workshops, which were more like mini CTE professional learning communities, and we discussed topics such as readiness levels, expectations, tiered SGOs, portfolios, rubrics, and even assessing assessments themselves. Incorporating and aligning the state and Common Core standards into the SGOs is imperative. Working through the SGO setting process allows the teachers and administrators to look closely at each important element and makes up quality SGO. These standards are a good example. We looked at the differences between the standards that address what students should know and what students should be able to do. Both elements are relevant, but choosing and applying the appropriate standards takes a lot of thought, effort, and research, from deciding how they should frame the SGO, And guided by standards, they need to measure the students' knowledge and abilities to set rigorous and achievable SGO goals, facilitating the learning, and then measuring the learning each student has accomplished. So it has become apparent that CTE teachers need to be supported with the task of planning to measure and measuring to plan. In these examples, standards such as employing knowledge or editing production can be measured with a skill or performance-based SGO or portfolio, and planning and budgeting, scheduling, and describing procedures often assessed and measured with written assessments, or could be part of student portfolios themselves as well. Appropriate assessments include modifying teacher-made or team-made, or even using third-party tests such as the final exams. A number of CTE teachers were enthused by potential use of portfolios and increased use of that, or the performance assessments, and expressed that they will be exploring these for their SGOs as well. And it makes sense that CTE teachers and programs are using real-world, hands-on, or performance-based assessments, and they are different than strictly academic courses. So why not assess this type of learning in an aligned manner of how the students learn and apply it? We broke down the differences between the general and specific SGOs, and where the specific SGO disrupts the default thinking that SGO has to be similar to an end-of-class assessment or summary of all things learned, and assist teachers to determine on how specific content or skills should be measured and assessed. I would be remiss if I didn't insert here that basing the SGO on prior student data is an essential conversation to have with teachers and will help to determine the SGO to use. Whether data is from standardized exams, previous class grades, or pre-tests, the data is critical and relevant to inform and frame the general or specific SGO. The following slides contain samples of SGOs and some of the related issues that are a result of working directly with our CTE colleagues. In STEM, for example, students must understand how to apply the problem-solving process to every solution they propose. Knowledge and ability to apply the process should be pre-assessed, and students should continue to learn and demonstrate their understanding, application, and documentation of the process in a portfolio, and will be assessed by a rubric. The teachers came back and said, or asked certain questions of us on how to guide the creation of their SGOs. For example, I have 3 preps. How do I set SGOs according to my schedule? Or how do I know which students should be captured in the SGOs? Here in this video production example, the teacher has 3 different preps, but the majority of students are in the first 2 in the 3 classes the instructor teaches. So they would obviously set their SGOs. They have to set 2 of them. And to capture the majority of their students, which are all video students in video, intro to video, and video 2. So setting their one SGO on the intro to video, the other on video 2, assessing the learning and digital portfolio graded by a rubric, and aligned to CTE and Common Core standards. CTE is the perfect opportunity to apply academics, as we've heard already and we already know. And students are expected to have in the workplace to communicate effectively with colleagues, customers, bosses, and subordinates. In this example, a child care teacher knew that many of their program students generally had difficulty with writing portions of the curriculum. When they pre-assessed their students, they found this to be largely true, with a fair amount of variation. They then set a specific tiered SGO that aligns with Common Core language arts standards and assesses the students' program writing assignments. Is the SGO rigorous enough? If SGO expects all students to accomplish one skill, it may not be rigorous. Instead of being too specific, we found out a culmination of learning concepts applied together in a meaningful way may be better to enhance an SGO and demonstrate relevant student learning. In this idea here, the catering plan final project perhaps can incorporate a number of related and important elements, including essential knife skills, in a more comprehensive and rigorous manner. In this example, the automotive teacher proposed an SGO based on the students performing a vehicle oil change, which is good and an essential skill. However, similar to the previous issue of being rigorous, we explored the idea of this being too limited in a specific skill or scope. The challenge was to identify other essential performance skills that students should attain during the program, and the SGO then evolved into a more comprehensive set of skills measured by both written and performance assessments that included the soft skills necessary to perform well in an entry-level job. Frequent question that we were posed with were, can a final exam or third-party test I already used to the program be used for the SGO? Well, the answer could be yes, but we discovered that many of these assessments are only applicable under the right circumstances, and most would not be appropriate for the following reasons. First, since our SLO timeline includes setting the SLO with the principal and concluding with the administrative conference as well, the SLO timeline can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Therefore, learning needed to be measured within the SLO is less than the curriculum covered throughout the entire school year or the semester that the class might run. A non-modified final exam or third-party assessment wouldn't accurately measure only the learning that occurs during the SLO timeline. As well, third-party assessments are generally used for program completion with programs that span anywhere from 2 to 4 years. These tests are used for program participants or concentrators. The questions and results would need to be disaggregated accordingly for what these students were taught and expected to know, and would be time and effort intensive for instructors. The assessment would also need to be given prior to the end of May if they are scored immediately, earlier if the assessments need to be sent and scored elsewhere to be available for the administrator and teacher collaborative review and scoring. SLO assessments are critical. Teachers need to choose their assessments carefully and create or edit assessments that measure only the learning that takes place for these particular students during the SLO timeline. Specific learning that is measurable and aligned to standards covers an appropriate amount of period of time, is achievable, and is ambitious, and elements are already in our CTE programs. We're proud of them so far. The SLO process has added common documentation and communication regarding the measurement of student learning. Specifically for CTE, I'm excited that this process will further enhance communication and collaboration between the CTE teachers and their administrators. It also provides accountability opportunities to isolate essential elements of the program or identify student skills or learning that needs to be supported. Our CTE community looks to us for guidance and feedback as we in turn rely on them for knowledge of current school practice and issues that they encounter. Many teachers this year are setting their first set of SLOs by modifying assessments and program practices accordingly. It's our desire to support good teaching and student learning. We're excited about what's happening, and we plan to continue learning and sharing with our colleagues. Our office plans to enhance our resources with more SLO information as we continue to collect examples and have more discussions. So thank you very much.
And I'm just going to close with some of the lessons we learned throughout this, not even year really, since we kind of dived in last March it was. So we've really had a very active year. I think it's really important, and I think a couple of our presenters talked about this at the beginning, that whatever you do, it connects to the broader vision of the state and to your mission. And this clearly, we helped folks see that. We clearly saw the connection between what we were doing with teacher evaluation and the work we were already doing in CTE, and it really helped others get the big picture. We kind of explained this is not an I got you initiative, but one that we already knew the majority of teachers were already doing. It's a formal way of documenting it. We also know that we learned that it had to be a very thoughtful and thorough training on SLOs. Teachers and supervisors really needed to have a good understanding of the process. We learned that grouping CTE teachers together from similar content areas and working together was incredibly effective. If these teachers were already using state standards that were aligned to each of the clusters, there was common ground for discussion. We saw these discussions really incredibly valuable learning experiences. The teachers could spend time unpacking the standards to develop ideas about multiple ways to demonstrate mastery. They had an opportunity to align curriculum to standards and really focus on content and skills. So we also learned that it really needs, as you've probably heard, to be a very inclusive process with lots of opportunities for input and feedback. Without the feedback of our teachers, this would have been a top-down, kind of just driven process, and one that just created, teachers were already anxious in our field. They were scared, they were concerned, and I think by including them in this, it really helped, as I said, assuage much of that anxiety. Communication was critical. We communicated with the field. We were regularly trying to keep up an FAQ and provide guidance. And the department, and this is our Office of Evaluation, did much of that too. we recognize that the SGO process requires significant shift for some teachers thinking about instruction and assessment, and that we as a department are going to really roll up our sleeves and be willing to support and provide the technical assistance to achieve these goals. This is where we clearly know that we're going to need to provide ongoing focused intervention. So we have acknowledged we don't have all the answers. We tell the field we don't. We'll tell you on this webinar we don't, but we've certainly learned a lot. We've learned that you did have to dive in, or else you can sit working on guidance and rules forever. So I invite you to look at our website that has a wealth of resources, both related to reports that have been issued from our advisory committee, practical advice for teachers, lessons learned. We also have an SGO quality rating rubric that may be helpful for those that are interested in SLOs. So thank you for this opportunity, and I will hand this back to our moderators.
Thank you so much, Marie and Sean, and thank you, Tyler, as well, for all of the information that you all shared. I know it's very comprehensive, and we're really excited to hear about it. So now we'd like to spend just our last couple of minutes addressing any further questions that you all might have about SLOs or evaluation or anything else that you've heard on this webinar today. So if you have any remaining questions, feel free to put them in the chat or QA box, but I think we've got a couple of questions to get started, so I will turn things over to Kate.
Thanks. And as a reminder, even though we're not going to be able to get to all the questions today, we'll definitely address them after the fact and post them along with the webinar recording and the PowerPoint. So don't let the short amount of time left block you from asking questions. The first question is specifically for Tyler in Missouri, from your neighbor in Kansas, about what percentage of a teacher's evaluation related to student performance is considered significant. I think you used that term, and so I guess there's a little bit more information on that.
Yeah, so we actually haven't determined that at the state level. That is up for determination at the district level. We haven't really been able to gather any data yet because a lot of this is relatively nascent around what sorts of measures districts are using or percentages they're applying. But we've heard numbers thrown around such as 33%, things of that nature. That's really where we are now because we don't have a mandated percentage. It's somewhat foggy, and we're, as I said, because it's nascent, we're in the process of gathering that data right now. The most we can do is recommend, given that we don't have any administrative rule or state statute around that area.
Thanks. So I think the last question I'm going to pose to all of the speakers, anybody can jump in, is the one that I brought up earlier and then punted for later, around a very contentious issue among the CT community around highly qualified teachers, and how you might be addressing the highly qualified teacher requirement for CT teachers as you're integrating the academic content in and potentially looking to give credit for academic courses.
Okay, did you direct that question at me, Jennifer?
I'm directing that question to anybody who wants to jump in and answer it.
Okay, well, I can start with trying to explain a little bit from our perspective. Our teachers that are high school teachers, junior high and middle school, they have to be highly qualified, and they are in the public school setting. Our teachers that are in technology centers who are working on alternative and provisional certifications, they are working towards a standard certificate, which makes them qualified teachers. And once they get their standard certificate, then they become highly qualified. And so what we're doing with the Teacher Institute is beginning the college credit towards working towards that standard certificate.
Great. Any other states? New Jersey, anyone from Missouri or New Jersey want to?
In Missouri, in many of our area career centers, they're offering academic credit for, they're actually like doing pull-out programs where the kids, like say in an auto tech program, go to an academic, do math or English 1 hour a week, and then they get math credit or English credit, and those have to be taught by a highly qualified math teacher or comm arts teacher. And so there always has to be a teacher of record that's highly qualified in the core subject in order for the student to get academic credit.
And this is New Jersey, and I would say similarly, so that a CTE teacher would not be able to a credit could not be awarded for a class that was only taught by a CTE teacher because they would not be highly qualified. So they would either need to team teach, or there would be need to have some indication that there was, a math, an LAL, or science teacher of record that was working with in the curriculum aligned to the standards. So there are limited cases where CTE programs are receiving academic credit.
Thanks. Well, I'm going to take this moment. We are officially out of time, so I'm just going to quickly say thank you to all of our participants. Thank you to the many people who joined today's webinar. As I said at the beginning, this is the beginning of the session. This is really just the first in what we hope are many conversations we can help facilitate, information we can share in partnership with the Center for Great Teachers and Leaders. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Catherine to close us out.
Thank you so much, Kate. And yes, I would say, this has been a really fantastic way for us all to come together. So thank you to NASDA CTEC. Thank you to our Comprehensive Center partners who have really helped to make this happen. And thank you to all of our state presenters for really coming through and sharing all of the amazing work that's happening. So when you all sign out, you will get a link to a survey. If you wouldn't mind just filling out, it's super quick survey on what you thought of our webinar, and we'll send out a link to the recorded webinar along with answers to any questions that we weren't able to get to, which will be on our center website in about a week or so. So look out for that. And if you have any questions or comments in the meantime, feel free to contact me. And thank you all for joining, and have an excellent rest of your day. Thanks, everyone. We'll sign off now.